So many factors that come into keeping a business floating, into keeping a business growing. You have to be open to new ideas. You have to be constantly querying what you're doing and saying, is it correct? Am I doing the right thing? Am I on the right roadmap for my industry? It's not what you want. It's not what your product is. It's what does the customer need. And so, from our perspective, we have to constantly sit back and say, what's happening in our target customer base? Now, we can help them, we can guide them, we can cajole them into the direction that we believe is the right direction. But in the end, we have to listen to them. And if we don't listen to our customers and say, well, what are you teaching, or what are you going to be teaching in 5 years' time, then our growth will stop.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Business of Learning podcast. My name is Joao Camargo, and my guest here today is Graham Celine, who is the VP of Business Development and Marketing at Intelitek. Graham, thank you so much for being here today.
Hey, how you doing? Good to be here.
I'm excited to have this chat. Why don't we start off with you just telling everyone a little bit more about Intelitek, what you guys do, who you help, and what you're all about.
Sure, no problem. So Intelitek's a veteran company. We've been around for over 40 years in the education space. We provide learning resources to schools teaching technology. Most of our focus is on the manufacturing industrial environments. Like I said, we've been doing that for 40 years. The company started out really focused on robotics when robotics wasn't really a thing yet. But it was also very expensive. And so we came up with our own robotic solutions that allowed schools to teach industrial robotics. The whole market has changed a lot. The education focus has changed a lot, but our focus still remains in teaching what today is called career tech education. Back then, it might have been vocational training. But our focus, again, career tech education, primarily for the manufacturing world, which includes industry and industrial automation, industrial maintenance, all of those areas. We teach both the skills that are required, but also the employability side of it. So we teach students how to be part of that industry. And our focus, again, is on the people who work in those industries, not necessarily the people who design those industries. So less at the engineering or four-year college level, but more at the technician, community college, high school, and even middle school level for workers who are thinking of going into that space and how to do that. So our approach is very hands-on. So we start off, it is a very education-focused environment. So many vendors, for example, will provide training, but their training is provided for primarily industry. So if you thought of a PLC manufacturer, they would provide training, but it's designed for an engineer who works at a company that is doing PLC training. We look at it and we say, we're training a student who's in a community college or a high school. So it's a different level of training, but also it's a very complete training program. We focus a lot on the instructors, the educators, giving them the materials they need to teach whatever core skill set, but also the hands-on approach. So there's curriculum for the instructor, but then there's labs and lab equipment and exercises that the students can do. And then we take those core skills and we migrate it into what we call capstone environments, where students will learn how these systems work together. Because in the end, in industry, nothing ever stands alone. You can be a robotics technician, but a robot is connected to a machine or feeding a machine or connected to some process. And so students need to know the entire gamut of the technologies that they'll be working with. And that's where our focus is, how to make students good employees for employers who are looking for people in their...
Yeah, no, it's awesome. Thank you for sharing that. It's interesting because when we were first having our conversation before we started the recording and all these things, you mentioned a statistic that was very, very interesting to me, which was about, I think you said there's going to be around 460,000 job opportunities by the year 2030 when it comes to the manufacturing side of things. So it sounds like you guys are playing really heavily into that. Of course, because of what you've been doing for such a long time, but also leveraging that to help a lot more of these students to have a better direction into these fields, understanding it further. So I would love for you to tell me a little bit more about those job opportunities and how you guys are thinking ahead for those years to come.
Yeah, absolutely. And of course, this is something that changes dynamically over time. If we'd had this conversation 10 years ago, it might have been a very different conversation. But if we think back to my parents' age, manufacturing is a dirty job. You went off to the job and you came back head to toe dark black color, with soot and dirt, and you had to scrub. Today, that's not the case. We offshored manufacturing in the 2010 on because we needed labor, and cheap labor was found in other countries. Now, manufacturing is automated. We've hit this period of Industry 4.0 with the internet era of manufacturing, and so economically, it makes sense to have manufacturing local as well. And then we hit COVID, and COVID knocked us for a six because of hit us out of the ballpark because of the supply chain issues. And so a lot of companies are saying, well, why can't we manufacture in the USA or wherever they are? And so they're onshoring manufacturing, and now we need workers in manufacturing. But these are not what we once thought manufacturing workers were. The majority of these workers are skilled workers. They're not hammering stuff. They're operating equipment, they're installing equipment, and they're maintaining equipment. The classic example is Amazon. Amazon does all this stuff. They sort all of these package, FedEx, all of these. They're not actually manufacturing anything. It's an industrial process. But if one of those conveyor lines breaks, if the robot stops working, if nobody maintains the robot so that it doesn't stop working, those lines stop. And so you need technicians to work in that. And so you can go and work at Amazon and great job as a driver, but if you get a job as a maintenance technician, it's all year round. That line doesn't stop when it's not the Christmas or the Halloween or or some other holiday season. That line's got to run. The opposite, that's when those technicians are doing maintenance on those lines, making sure they operate. So we're generating tens of thousands of jobs in industry and manufacturing, and we just don't have the people to fill that because we've persuaded people, and to a large extent parents, that you have to send your kids to college. And so they go to get a 4-year degree, but in the end, those jobs are full. And the jobs that are not getting filled are the jobs in this mid-tier range of technicians, operators, installers. And there are tens, if not hundreds of thousands of jobs opening up in that space that are really good jobs, that are well-paying jobs, that are lifelong jobs, that require skilled people with education and capabilities to fill those jobs, and we're just not filling those jobs. So the gap is opening. That skilled gap that we're continuously, we have unqualified people and we have overqualified people. We need to fill those people in the middle, and that's the role that we're trying to take on.
And it sounds like a lot of that is coming from, call it a lack of awareness and education on the reality of how manufacturing is nowadays. Because as you said, back in the day, it was like, hey, just go work, come back home, fill the suits all over your face. And like people might have a connotation of the word manufacturing that is going to look a lot like that when it's no longer the case. Would you agree with that? It's just a lack of awareness into the reality of things nowadays?
Yeah, I think we've conditioned ourselves to believe that. And so we look down on manufacturing workers, but today that's not the case. The other statistic that the average salary of a manufacturing worker, I'm talking about a technician in manufacturing, is over $100,000 a year. Now, if you go and you get a degree in computer science, you may be earning more than that. But if you're going to go work at a McDonald's or in retail, you're not going to come close to that. So there are really good jobs in manufacturing that are, underrated in that people don't realize that. We had a guy once on a podcast, on a webinar 3 or 4 years ago. And the guy was in his 40s, and he was sitting on the couch, unemployed, and he saw an ad for a local community college that was advertising robotics training course. He went and he took the course. He got a job before he even graduated from the course. It was a 6-week crash program on robotics, industrial robotics. He got offered the job before he even finished, and he was working that job. And he said to me, "Hey, have you heard of a 401k? I never had a 401k."
Oh, wow.
And a guy in his 40s who was had a good life. He'd worked as a truck driver. He'd worked in construction. He'd worked in lots of different jobs, all of them tough. And suddenly he realized that he had potential, that he could go into a job in industry where they respected people like him, who are committed to working hard, who have the capability to learn and to take care and take responsibility for things. And suddenly he had a job that with a big company that was giving him benefits and opportunity to learn more and to grow in his career. Last I heard, he was now a supervisor. So, we just don't see that. We look down on this, and, the old word, vocational, was kind of like not a good word to have. Yet, probably the most in-demand, and this is not something we actually deal with directly, but the most in-demand careers are HVAC technicians and welders. Those are much harder, but in the manufacturing, there's a huge amount, and there's growth in the manufacturing space. If you look at the companies that are building manufacturing plants in the U.S., there's the semiconductor industry are building fabs all across the country. All of the different large manufacturers, the auto manufacturers, are building plants all over the country. They're reshoring, and they're looking for people to work in those factories. And the people that work in those factories are not manual laborers. They are skilled laborers operating, installing, and maintaining.
Yeah.
And they need.
Yeah. And I think a lot of the plus side on this as well, which is something that I'm sure we could dive into for hours on end, is that there's no $150,000 of debts on the back end of it either. Right? It's a completely different entry point into a career that can be very fulfilling, very very rewarding as well, in terms of the monetary side of things for a lot of these workers. And they don't have to do that 4-year degree that is going to put them in debt for the rest of their life. So that's an interesting point. And I'd love to hear a little bit more on Intelitek side of things, how you guys are viewing this growth and I guess strategizing, looking forward to the years ahead as well. So tell me about some of the possible challenges that come alongside the looking to keep the company in a scalable way, maintaining the scalability of the company in the engagement that you guys do with these schools and those conversations. Because on one side, there's a lot of opportunity, but on the other side, there's so many things that are becoming, I'll call it commoditized with now AI and courses and all these things. So talk to me about some of that for you guys as well.
Yeah, I think in the end, there's the factor that plays into this, in my opinion, the most is the availability of somebody with vision to see that. When we've been into states or schools where they look and they say, we got no students. Nobody wants to take this. But that's really a factor of making it attractive. If you go to a school that's more successful, that's very dedicated to this one, the instructors and the deans of the departments that are career tech education, workforce readiness are in contact with industry, whether that be through local boards or local economic development councils or through state funds or state CTE directors that are challenged and chartered to grow the career tech environment, the workforce environment specifically for manufacturing. They're getting the needs and they're understanding those needs and they're building programs for those employers. But then they've got to take that message and they've got to go down to the schools, whether it starts in the high school or even lower. and get the students to be interested in that. Look, we've done a great job. If you talk to educators in K-12, they're all talking about STEM. Yeah. Everybody's got to be STEM educated, and that's fantastic. And we've done a really good job at integrating STEM into many, many schools and many, many school systems.
Yeah.
But we don't take it anywhere from there. It's kind of like they do STEM in elementary school and middle school, and then it stops. And then there's the students that are naturally technology focused, and a lot of them are the ones that may go off and become engineers. But then there's no real pathway from STEM into CTE to prepare students and to show them those options. And that's where we look. So we start off on that. We've got programs that teach STEM. We teach computer science or robotics on the elementary school and middle school level. A lot of those programs are online programs, easy to access, scalable programs, which is what STEM needs. There are a lot of schools that just don't have the resources to buy expensive equipment. But then they're moving to into the high school environment, and that's where we're looking at how do we help those high schools integrate advanced programming, because again, budgets are always a problem. Setting up a lab with 10 industrial robots is beyond the capabilities of most high schools. Setting up advanced manufacturing plants in a high school is very difficult. But if you can create subsets of that, so we have online programs, we have simulation capabilities, we have entry-level training programs that are much more suited to that high school environment, and then they move up into the community college or the technical high school, technical college environment, and eventually also possibly into the four-year college environment. In those environments, the capabilities are more advanced, and typically they could have bigger and more advanced labs. Some of our programs are in graduate schools. In those cases, these are students that are now looking at the manufacturing environment and saying, well, how do we take advantage of things like big data, AI, advanced simulation, virtual reality? How do we take these brand new capabilities and take advantage of them and feed them into employers and manufacturers around the country? I think for us, it's having the right knowledge. Right now we're very focused at semiconductor, just because, we've heard from semiconductor companies that they're bringing in workers from international, from other countries, and putting them to work for a period of time and then sending them back because they can only come here on a short-term work visa because they can't find employers. But if you go look in states like Ohio, Arizona, Texas, and many others, there are companies like TSMC, Samsung, Intel that are building massive fabs. Right now, they're in the construction phase. In a year or 2 or 3 years' time, they'll be looking for workers to just go there and work. And so they need grounding in semiconductor. They need grounding in working in clean rooms. They need grounding in understanding the different processes. They're pretty similar to working in a big, fancy car factory. They need to know the basics of electrical. They need to know the basics of mechanical. They need to know things like hydraulics, pneumatics, programming, robotics, just on a different scale. So we're creating programs that are tailored to the semiconductor environment that will help those semiconductor companies get pre-qualified workers. We'll never take away the full on-the-job training capability of a semiconductor fab, but if a typical worker going into a semiconductor fab would have a learning curve anywhere between 3 to 6 months before they're operating on their own, if we can reduce that by 50% for a company, we're saving them tons of money. And so we're working with the colleges. Well, how do you get funding for a semiconductor training program? What do you need to have in a semiconductor training program? How do you get that set up? How do you train their instructors? And then how do you recruit students? And then once those students are recruited, how do you get them jobs? And so, being able to do that, and we've been doing that again in different areas and countries around the world for a long time. And so we know how to do that, and we've been working on that.
Yeah.
That's sort of most up-to-date thing. If you look just before that, it was Industry 4.0 with the modernization or internet age of manufacturing.
Yeah, because
Through that,
no, I was gonna.
there's a lot of new technology and a lot of changes to technology that we had to introduce into our programs to make sure that the students were up to speed on those different skills.
Yes, and that's awesome because in a way, you help them become much more intentional with guiding them through that path, right? Because sure, as you mentioned, it can get to a point where throughout their education, they get to that gap where nothing really exists. It doesn't show them exactly where to go. If they hop onto the higher education side of things, then yes, they are a little bit more intentional. But how can you create that bridge for them to get to a place where it makes sense, it's easy, it's seamless, it's frictionless for them to make those decisions? So that's really awesome to hear. And then I have one final question for you here, Graham, which is an interesting one because it's actually not a question from me. It's a question from our last guest to you, and they had no idea who you were. So are you ready for the question? Here it is.
Sure.
An interesting one, maybe a deep one. So let's see. What is something that you thought you knew about your career when you were 20 years old that you learned later on in life turned out to be completely wrong?
Well, I thought I wanted to be an engineer.
Oh.
I trained as an engineer. I studied engineering, electrical engineering, and I started my career out designing products and working as a design engineer. And then I discovered that I prefer to work with people, not products. I moved from an engineering to a product-oriented career, and over time more into a business focus. And so, I still deal on a day-to-day basis with technology, and use my engineering training and my technical knowledge that I studied. But in the end, I'm not designing products as I thought I would when I was 20. I think that in the end, that's any 20-year-old's journey is going to be different. But the most important thing is to search and find the path that makes you happy, that go to work every day and find satisfaction in what you do. And I think I found that path. I've been doing this for almost 20 years. I've been working in the marketing, business development, product promotion side of companies, many technology companies, and that's been for me very satisfying.
That's awesome. And actually, I lied. One final question here because it popped into my brain, so I'll ask it. With everything that you've experienced now throughout your career, and maybe we'll keep it specific to Intelitek just because of our conversation, what do you think is the hardest part of trying to grow your business, maybe in the business development and marketing side of things?
It's there's so many factors that come into keeping a business floating, into keeping a business growing, and you have to be open to new ideas. You have to be constantly querying what you're doing and saying, is it correct? Am I doing the right thing? Am I on the right roadmap for my industry? It's not what you want. It's not what your product is. It's what does the customer need. And so, from our perspective, we have to constantly sit back and say, what's happening in our target customer base? Now, we can help them. We can guide them. We can cajole them into the direction that we believe is the right direction. But in the end, we have to listen to them. And if we don't listen to our customers and say, well, what are you teaching? Or what are you going to be teaching in 5 years' time? Then our growth will stop. And that's why, I said at the very beginning, the challenge is listen to industry. The schools shouldn't really be listening to me about what they should be doing. They should be listening to their local industry. So go to local trade shows, go to local community forums, go to Chamber of Commerce meetings, go to the economic development meetings of the state and find out what's happening in your state's development, and that becomes the roadmap for a school. And if I listen to what the school's telling me about what they're doing with their roadmap, then I'll know what my roadmap needs to be. Because you can be doing really well right now, but if you're not looking at what the next step is, your company's not going to get.
Yeah, I like that. Graham, thank you so much for your time. This has been such an incredible, insightful conversation. Where should people go if they want to learn a little bit more about you and, of course, a little bit more about Intelitek?
www.intelitek.com, Intelitek.
Amazing. I will leave everything down here in the description. If you're still listening to this conversation and you want to hear more conversations like this, please hit the subscribe button, and I will see you on the next episode. Thank you so much for your time, Graham.